Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name's Carter, and I'll be the host of today's show. For those of you that are unfamiliar with our school and what we do, we are Part 61 Flight School here in St. George and in West Jordan. We help students go from 0 hours all the way up to multi-engine instructor and provide them with the path and the opportunity to pursue a career in aviation. We've designed these industry expert interviews to help our students and other interested parties to learn more about career fields and other options that lay at the end of our training programs. So today we are fortunate to meet with retired Navy Captain Brett Lasson and to hear his wisdom and insights from his experience as a military aviator in our United States Navy. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy.
So, hey everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is our industry expert interview. Today we're joined by retired Navy Captain Brett Lasson, former F-18 Hornet and Super Hornet pilot, and current first officer for FedEx on the 777. Thanks, Brett, for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited about this interview. I believe you have lots of great insight and wisdom to provide us, and looking forward to getting to talk to you and get to know you better.
Great.
So if you don't mind, sir, we'll just jump right in and get to know you a little bit more. If you don't mind, just tell us about your background and how you got here.
So, graduated high school, and then went to the U.S. Naval Academy. Graduated from the Naval Academy in 1996. And then went off to flight school. I did 2 years of flight school. Ended up fortunate to select Hornets out of flight school, and then went to Lamar, California. Flew there for majority of my career. Did some time in San Diego, did some non-flying tours in Italy, and then ended as flying the T-45 as an instructor down in Corpus Christi, or Kingsville, Texas.
Awesome. That's really awesome. And what kind of sparked your interest in aviation? How did you
So I kind of grew up in a time frame when terrorism and the Middle East unsettling was happening, and so a couple of things. The bombing of Libya in 1986 by Ronald Reagan for some terrorist incidents that happened in Germany. And I just remember the footage coming from that about the A6s flying combat missions in downtown Libya. And then when I was in high school, the Gulf War kicked off, and they had all the reporters on the carrier reporting from strikes going on in Iraq. So that's what got my interest in aviation. And my grandfather was in the Navy during World War II. He was just a seaman, but he served the South Pacific, but he didn't fly. But that kind of gave me the genesis, I guess, for my want to go into aviation. Just seeing airplanes land off an aircraft carriers to take off from them. It's kind of what I always wanted to do. My parents took me to San Diego one time, got to see a carrier. I'm like, I really want to do that.
Yeah.
So
was there any particular interest in military versus civilian aviation?
So when I was younger, I didn't really know anything about how to become a pilot other than join the military. There was no real resource out there to allow me to choose a path that was different than just naval aviation for me, or military aviation in general. So I never really even considered a path other than the military, because I didn't know anything else existed. So I thought that was the only way you could become a pilot. And I didn't really have anybody in my family that was into aviation that could tell me or steer me in a different direction. So that's how I went.
Awesome. And so you said you went to flight school. I'm assuming that started off in Pensacola, Florida?
Yeah, Pensacola, Florida. I actually did Air Force primary in Enid, Oklahoma, and then I did intermediates and advanced in Kingsville, Texas.
Okay. Awesome. And what was that journey like? Tell us a little bit about your training experiences and kind of what you learned along the way.
Well, you learn real quick in aviation that there's no easy way to get what you want. You can't cheat on a test. You might be able to cheat on a written test, but the real test in an airplane is all about your preparation and your ability. And so, You might well do well academically, but if you don't do well on the practical tests, you're not going to succeed. And so, you learn real quickly that preparation really helps you succeed in the airplane. And that's what I learned, particularly chair flying and taking to heart all those lessons that the instructors teach you how to do. That's probably the biggest thing I learned through flight school. And then perseverance, you're never going to have a great day. There's no such thing as a perfect flight. They don't exist. Everybody makes a mistake. Everybody can do something better. And so you're striving for perfection, and you hope you achieve excellence is kind of the motto that we use. You're never really perfect, but you might be excellent. And that's what you learn. Just be able to persevere through the good and the bad. Don't get too low, don't get too high. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other and enjoy it while you can.
Awesome. So you mentioned something about chair flying. Can you tell me a little more what that is?
Yeah, so for the uninitiated, those that haven't started, what basically chair flying is you're flying the flight that you're about to do at 0G, 0 knots. It's sitting in a chair. And in the beginning, it's very, very, very scripted. You're going to go through your start sequence. You're going to go through your calls to the tower. You're going to go through where you're going to put the gear and when you're going to flip the gear up, when you're going to put the gear down, where the flaps going to be. You're going to walk through those things, repetition over and over and over. You basically do the whole flight in your head, trying to move and visualize what you can do. It's the same kind of thing that professional athletes do. They visualize what they're going to do to win or to succeed. Well, it's the same thing in aviation. As you get better, as I progress in my career, I could chair fly in the 5-minute walk to the airplane. I'll just go over, and that's usually when I have a better flight. So if I didn't do that, I usually don't do it. And even today, when I'm walking out the airplane to go to work, I'm thinking about all the things that I need to do to get me up to altitude. And then when we get done with the 10-hour flight, it's my landing, I'm thinking about, I'll take 5 minutes and I'll think about all the things I want to do that I need to do to be successful and land this big airplane. And that's chair flying. It's just thinking out of the airplane and practicing before you actually do it, so that when something goes different than you planned, your head doesn't explode. A helmet fire, what we used to call it.
So in your opinion, why is chair flying beneficial versus a simulator?
Well, a simulator can be good if you have instruction, because sometimes when people get in a simulator by themselves, they teach themselves some bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
But typically with chair flying, you've been taught the procedures and you're just memorizing the procedures and you're flipping switches. And so that allows your brain to focus on the technique and the hands-on of actually controlling the airplane, rather than thinking about, you think it's easy, like you drive down the road. I mean, how many times have you been driving down the road on your Bluetooth, right? You go to change lane, you have to pause, right? You're talking to someone, you just pause to look over your shoulder, right? Well, chair flying, because you've already thought about the column, you can look over your shoulder and you can, look for another airplane, or you can look for the tower, look for your turn point from the pattern, whatever, because you're doing multitasking, and that frees up your brain. When you first start flying, even now, your brain seems to shrink because you're doing something that's difficult and you're doing something that is not kind of foreign to you. And so you tend to lose a few IQ points when you're flying an airplane. So the more prepared you can be to get into that airplane you're going to learn more and you're going to progress faster. Chair flying is the way to do that.
Okay, so if I'm in my Piper Archer over at Random Aviation, and I'm wanting to practice before my check flight, my DPE, how would I set that up? How would I do that?
So, there's a couple things. I mean, if you're doing your first initial check ride, say you're doing your pattern hop with the CFI, right? And you're going up for your first solo.
Mm-hmm.
I personally would, and I used to do this with kids in the Navy, is I would tape out the traffic pattern on the ground. And I would walk through the traffic pattern and I would say, all right, here I'm going to make this call. This is where the gear is going to come down. This is where the flaps are going to be set to. I'm going to do this with the nose. I'm going to set the power with this. This is what I'm scanning as I go around the corner, I'm getting ready to flare. This is what I'm going to look long down the runway so I can judge the flare rate. All of those little things you're going to keep walking yourself through so that you don't have it becomes second nature when you do it. Because the problem with aviation, one, it's expensive, right?
Right.
And so you don't want to have to go up and redo this thing 15 times because you're paying for it, especially in the civilian world. So you want to get it right the first time if you can. And you're paying to learn this. And chair flying allows you the ability to learn more, maximize your time in an airplane, and really become a better pilot. It'll get to the point where you don't need to do it. Or like I said, you can do it in 30 seconds because you can think to your head what I've got to do, what call-outs I need to make, all the things I need to do. And really, it's more, for me now, it's more about getting my mind in the right space to go flying. To make sure that I am now not driving a car, I'm flying an airplane and just get myself mentally prepared to go and do that.
Yeah. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We've talked a lot about training. I know you've been in this for a long time. Why have you stayed in this career? What's kept you?
Well, you can either work for a living or you can do something you love, right? That's kind of what, I used to tell my kids all the time, choose something you enjoy doing because you're going to spend a majority of your time going to work. You'll be away from your family a long time. So you might as well choose something that you enjoy, whether that's being a doctor or a lawyer, whatever it is, salesman. Doesn't matter. Choose something you enjoy. I enjoy flying. And I didn't really realize how much I enjoyed flying until I had a couple of non-flying tours in the Navy. And then I realized that I'm made for this. This is what I like. I don't really enjoy paperwork. I never have. I don't really enjoy the administrative stuff. I enjoy the camaraderie. I enjoy the people. I enjoy all of the good things about flying. And so to get paid to do it is a privilege, and that's why I continue to do it to this day. It's not easy being away from your family for a long time. Deployments in the Navy and trips, whether you're a professional pilot now, days, sometimes weeks away from your family. But there's the good return on investment too. You get good quality time at home when you're home, right? You don't have the office call, and you don't have people calling to ask you to sign something or do something. There was a time in my life where I had 2 cell phones and probably a phone call every about 5 minutes, right? That was fun, and I enjoyed helping people and doing those things, but I enjoyed flying an airplane more, and so that's what I chose to do.
Awesome. You're currently with FedEx. You're flying the Boeing 777. Can you tell me more about maybe a traditional path, what that would look like for an aviation student?
Yeah, so for young kids wanting to get into aviation, I think now's a great time to get into the field. The freight industry is probably a little bit during COVID, the freight industry really took off. It's kind of normalizing now, so it's going through a little bit of growing pains. But and anybody in this industry, before I got into the professional aviation, civilian professional aviation industry, I had people tell me, hey, it's really cyclical, up and down, and furloughs. That stuff happens. It can happen in any job. To me, the benefits outweigh the negatives in a lot of ways. But for now, I think a kid has a really good opportunity to get into aviation because it's a growing field. When I was younger, flying was a privilege. You flew very rarely, right? It was pretty much, I think by the time I graduated high school, I'd probably flown an airplane 4 times. And so it wasn't something that you did on the regular. Well, now families fly young kids. We lived in Italy, we flew all over. Kids have flown in airplanes their entire life. It's just nothing new. Excuse me. So it's a growing sport. It's something that's going to be around and only getting bigger because more people are going to be able to afford to fly, and they're going to want to go and see the world to make the world smaller. So I don't see it getting any less busy. And it's on par with, you are a professional, you have a profession. And I think that, as far as earnings go, you can make as much money doing that as about anything else in the world. It's a good job. I think that getting into aviation is expensive, but so is going to medical school.
Right.
Good paying job, law school is expensive. All of those things are expensive, but you're becoming a professional like them, and it pays, over a 30-year career, you're going to make good money. And I think it's a great job. It does come with some sacrifices, but no job is perfect. So there's a lot of things that, I don't know that anybody's like, oh, my job is perfect. There's no negatives about it. Everything has pluses and minuses. You just got to realize that take what's important to you.
Awesome. I think those are some great takeaways. Thanks for your insight on that. If you don't mind, I'd like to just talk a little bit about kind of the excitement of flying a fighter jet. Can you kind of describe what that's like? Is there anything you can comparable in the civilian world?
No, I mean, there's nothing that, I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's nothing even close to remotely like flying an airplane. I mean, you can go and fly. Maybe the stunt pilot guys get a lot of it. They definitely pull more G's and sustain more G's, so we do the onsets a lot quicker. But you know, military aviation there's nothing like it in the world. You know, especially being carrier based. If you want to know what it's like to land an aircraft carrier, you just got to go and do it.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to experience it. It's fun. It can be terrifying, right? You know, weather's bad or whatever. But gals are doing it all over the world in the middle of the night and pitching decks and, you know, with aplomb. I mean, they're doing it all the time. That's a testament to the equipment and the training that the military gives them. You know, they really are state of the art. I mean, there's nothing like it. But it's a lot of work too. You know, people don't realize how much effort goes into going and flying an hour and a half, right? Depending on what kind of flight you're doing, it could be 6, 8 hours, 10 hours of preparation for a 2-hour flight, hour and a half flight, and then 3 to 4 hours worth of debrief on the backside. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of what, you know, it's like the old golfer, man, I wish I could hit a golf ball like you. This guy's such a professional golfer. So no, if you wanted to hit a golf ball like a professional, you would go out and golf every day. And you work on your swing, you drive the ball, and you work to perfect it. And so it's the same thing with aviation. If you want to be that, you got to work towards it, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. So, I mean, obviously I have no experience with carrier aviation, but I'm picturing Screaming Over California at Disneyland, where they do the initial launch. Like
yeah, that's about 10% of what it's like. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
So which catapult how heavy you are. Yeah.
Okay.
So we used to call Cat 3 the time machine.
Yeah.
Because it knocked you in the back last week.
So how fast does it accelerate? 0 to what? And
Well, I mean, your end speed, depending on how heavy you are, is usually as you hit the end of the cat stroke and you're able to open up your eyeballs and look, you're doing about 180 knots or so. It's about 200 miles an hour. And I forget how long a catapult stroke is, 300 feet or so. Or, 350 feet, something like that. You're not going, you're accelerating the whole time. So by the time you realize it, you probably already got double that distance. So, in a quarter mile, I think acceleration-wise, the only thing that is actually more akin to a catapult shot is a top fuel dragster funny car.
yeah.
Those guys are crazy acceleration, right? For 2.5 seconds. That's probably about the kind of acceleration you get off a catapult. Probably more than a catapult, actually, but
That's pretty cool. So I think most people, I mean, me included, see military pilots as kind of an elite group. Can you kind of help our audience understand how that's maybe the case for the military, but how we can also make it more accessible in the civilian world? How can we also experience some of these same things?
Well, military aviation is a niche thing, right? It was my boyhood dream to go and do that. And that's not everybody's dream, that people want to go and fly. And I don't think, I've been, in the last 3 years, been around an assortment of different pilots. And I can tell you that I've flown with some guys and gals that are straight up civilian pilots, are really, really good pilots. Like, they're really good at their job. And in some ways, they're better. They know the industry, they know how the industry works, they know how the airplane works, they know all these things, and you can really learn a lot from these people. So, this thing that military pilots are better. No, we just have different experiences, right? We just have done something different. There's nothing, flying a F-18 and flying a Boeing 777, about the only similarity is that they both have wings and engines, right? That's just completely different kind of flying.
Yeah.
The planes react completely differently. What is the same is a good instrument scan, right? If you know how to scan instruments and look out the window and, fly an airplane, that's the same. But they're not anywhere close to the same. But they're both, before I flew the Boeing 777, I flew the MD-11. And that's a challenging airplane. It's a work-managed airplane. You have to work to fly an airplane. And it required some good skill. And don't know that I ever mastered, I only flew it for a year and a half, but it was challenging. I learned a lot from people that have flown it for a lot of years. There's some guys that make it look really easy, and I was not one of them, but you know what? One day I'll get there, but it's the same. I don't think that there's any elitism, per se. It's just different. And I think that if someone doesn't want to join the military, but they still want to fly, I think going the civilian route is a great way to go, because it's still a great, in the end, a military pilot's going to get to the same job eventually that, the civilian person is getting. And in some ways, the civilian person is going to have a leg up, because they're going to be farther up the seniority list. There's a lot of things that in aviation, professional aviation, that you just don't really understand until you do it. But I think that really, if you love, have a passion or have a dream of flying, and the military's not for you, then go take some lessons. I guarantee you'll fall in love with it. I got a brother-in-law that's taken a few lessons, and he's really enjoyed it. He's like, also realized how hard it is. It's not easy, but he's really enjoyed it. And he's had a lot of fun doing it. And, has found a passion for it. And I think that that's really what it's about. Go and chase your passion, and then every day you go to work, it doesn't work. It's just fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a good job. So you talked a little bit about the civilian background pilots that you described as exceptional. Can you kind of tell me what makes them exceptional? What makes a good pilot?
Well, I think any pilot exceptionalism comes from preparation. And, I'm fairly new to this industry, and so there's a lot of things about the company that I don't know yet. You can read it a million times until you experience it. And I think that I've flown with people that are really, really well prepared. They're there to do the job, and they show up to the plane and know the regulations, both the company and the FAA. And I think that that is what sets good pilots apart from other pilots. Is just the ability to prepare yourself, to study and to get in the books and to read constantly, and just push yourself to become better. I think is the real what makes any pilot good, civilian or military.
Awesome. So, I guess kind of catering to those that are looking for the civilian path, what advice would you give someone that's interested in flying, and where do they start?
Well, I think the first thing is just go take a test ride. Go do a fun ride, see if you like it. Right? Maybe you get sick, maybe you don't, but see if you have, do it, and then just put your feet in the water. You're not going to get there if you don't try. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? So you have to go and just put your mind to it, and you got to commit, right? You have to commit to what you're going to do. If you've decided this is the path you're going down, you don't want to be that kind of kid that decides to want to go to medical school, gets to the third year of medical school, and goes, I'm done with this, but walks away with $250,000 worth of debt and no degree to pay it off, right? So it's not cheap, but it's also a point where you have wickets, so you can get your private pilot's license, then you can get your instrument rating, right? And then you can just kind of go along as you have money, or if you find a real passion for it, get in one of these. They have, I think, Random Aviation has a great program. You sign up with them, and they are going to get you from zero to hero, with all of your certificates in a 2-year time frame or sooner, right? And to be able to do that, now you've got your CFI, CFII, and you can now start instructing, working on your ATP minimums. You could have, if you worked hard, you could probably have your ATP minimums in 3.5 years. If you just flew every day and working hard, and now you're at a regional, and then you're a regional captain, and a 22-year-old kid would be in a major airline 30. I flew one kid was 27 years old.
Wow.
27 years old, and going to be at FedEx for 38 years?
Yeah, that's
right?
a serious
38 years.
Seniority number.
Yeah. He figured he would be number 1 or 2 in the company when he retired. 65. Crazy, right?
Wow.
So, it is possible. And, I think he graduated college and hadn't taken the aviation class or anything at 22. So in 5 years, he went from 0 to being a major. 5 years. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Why is seniority such a big deal, though? Like, why does it matter?
It's just the way that the airlines, the airline's a great gig. It's a union gig. So you work for a union. So there is no gold medal for doing anything better. You're not going to get promoted above your buddy, you know. And so it's all seniority. So the date you were hired, and you know everybody behind you is senior to you. Everybody hired in front of you is senior to you, and that's just the way the industry works. So in a lot of ways, getting your foot in the door and getting there quickly matters. So if you can go to a 4-year institution. Most of these major airlines have waived their 4-year degree requirement. So a smart person would be, if this is really my goal, I'm going to go start the aviation thing at 18, right? I think you have to be 21 to get an ATP. So you have 3 years anyway, so you get a couple years in, and then you get your stuff, your CFI, right? And then you start at a regional. Well, you only got a couple of years. A smart person would now go and probably doing some online schooling to get them a degree while they're doing it. And now, you're 18, now you're 25, you've got a degree, 4-year degree, plus you've been a captain of a regional airline for a year, you've got your pilot and command minimums, your 1,000 hours, and then for most airlines want, and then now you're able to go and upgrade, get picked up by a major. And so, time is of the essence, in a lot, if you're really interested in this. Kicking around until you're 35, there's a difference. I retired from the military, so this is a second career for me. But if it's what your first career would be, I think, everybody gets on the journey at a different time, but sooner is always better.
Awesome. Yeah, totally makes sense. If you don't mind, prior to this interview, I reached out to our Instagram audience and asked if they had any questions. They knew that we were going to be conducting this interview. And so I'll just read through about 5 or 6 of these questions and see if you have any takes.
Okay.
So the first question says, did you have any struggles while transitioning between aircraft? If so, what were some of those differences that were hard to get used to, and how did you learn to overcome them?
Yeah, I did struggle. I hadn't flared an airplane in 25 years, right? I mean, you just slide that sucker down on the carrier deck. So we fart around with the flare, but you don't really know. So I did struggle with landing a big airplane. It's not the same. There is a definite technique to it. I did struggle with that. What got me through all that was preparation. I studied a chair flight. Every simulator, I would go through what I was going to do. I'd go through my setups. I would go through comm calls, all the stuff I would need to do. V1 cuts on chair fly, everything that they expected us to do, I was doing in my head before I got to that. Helped free up some brain bites for a little bit of learning. And then probably the most important thing is I think I built a pretty decent instrument scan. And once you have that skill, you don't lose it. And so I can rely on that good scan to fly an airplane. And the scan's different. I was used to flying with the HUD, and now I can look down here. I was used to precision glide path control.
Yeah.
It's not the same. You don't need to go, you don't fly a PAPI like you do from LM, so it's just different. But you learn, I don't think I'm great at it yet, I don't know that I ever will be, but, I'm trying, every time I try to go. It's a little bit more difficult in the civilian world because, I might only get 4 landings a month, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes 5 or 6, but minimum 1. I got 1 a month. There are people that only get 1 a month, right? So it's hard to build a good habit pattern when you're not doing it very frequently. Where in the military, you would fly 3-4 times a week. Shoot, when I was in Kingsville, I was flying 5 to 7 times a week, right? And I wasn't getting all those landings. I was teaching a lot of people from the back seat a lot of times, but you got more repetition in the military. Shorter flights, more repetition, and that's really, I think, the best thing. It's just build the foundation, instrument scan, don't get discouraged, work hard.
Okay. Yeah. You talked a bit about instrument scans, and kind of as a lowly private pilot student, not really super familiar with instruments yet. Can you kind of describe what that is?
Yeah, so, you got your attitude indicator, airspeed, VSI. Those are your big 3 things that you're kind of scanning, There's some techniques, and I won't get into the CFI. I don't need CFIs yelling at me. But how you scan is typically from the attitude, and then the power comes in there to some degree, especially if you're flying like an ILS. T-45 didn't have any autopilot on it. Everything was handful.
Yeah.
So, and so power setting would teach the younger people, students, how to set the power to get them right kind of in the setting. So once you get the power setting there, make a small power movement. So essentially you're taking you're spoken off the AEI. So you're looking at your attitude, and then you're looking at the VSI, back to the attitude, airspeed, VSI, attitude, airspeed, back and forth. And then when you start flying, and when you're doing a visual approach, it's the same thing, right? The attitude is outside because you're learning, you don't teach instruments initially. So your attitude is a big old windscreen out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
You look outside, back in the airspeed, right? And then you have to look at the VSI. Those are the big things is, they teach you aim point, airspeed, aim point, airspeed, frontal and flare, right? So that's basically the same thing, but it's the same scan.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're always doing that, if you get that movement, and you learn how to do that, how to control it, then that just becomes better, and it's a skill that you never lose.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to the next question. While looking to progress in the military, what performance or skills are stressed the most in regard to flying?
Well, I can't speak to the Air Force. We have a different construct for the Navy than the Air Force does about junior officer development. But I think broadly, the things that make good pilots are going to make good pilots anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And mainly is all the things we've talked about: preparation, right, and intensity, right, wanting to fly. You can't be a seagull. If they got to throw rocks at you and get you off the ground, then you probably not doing well, right?
Yeah.
So you got to want to go fly. But I think that in the military, when I first joined the Navy and I got my first fleet squadron, I was told you were expected to maintain a standard. We expect you to be able to fly an airplane this good.
Mm-hmm.
If you can fly an airplane this good, that's plenty good. And it's a higher standard. But they expect you to also be a professional naval officer, take care of your people and learn hard and work hard and other things. So you learn really quickly that time management is very critical. But as far as, I think for an aspiring young military aviator, really it's mastering your craft. While you're in flight school, while you're at the FRS or the RTU in the Air Force, wherever you are, take the time to learn, because once you get to those operational squadrons, they're going to demand more of your time doing other things besides actually learning and flying. Air Force does probably arguably a little bit better job shielding their younger pilots, allow them that opportunity to develop that skill set. But the Navy, particularly, you got to be a task manager. You got to be able to focus on flying when it's important and focus on your groundwork when it's important and going back and forth and really stay in books. It's always evolving. Even the FARs change every year. Learning how to just constantly being a student of the game, if you will, I think is what sets any professional for success. Constantly learning and growing is important in anything.
For sure. And what is something that aviation has taught you that has affected your life outside of aviation?
So in aviation, I think I kind of touched on this before, but aviation is difficult, and you go through some, you're going to have some rough rides. I had a couple in flight school, they weren't terrible. That one was terrible. And so you learn real quickly to have some of the lows. You're going to have some bad days, and you're going to have some really good, man, that was an awesome flight, I did really well. And so I think just being on even keel and realizing, you're only as good as your last landing, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. You're only as good as your last flight. So if your last flight was a steaming pile of poop, you're going to feel like a steaming pile of poop.
Yeah.
So you just got to learn to get over that, put it behind you, and make the next flight better. That's the real important thing. So, and I think that goes with anything in life. You're going to be fed. The only time you fail is when you quit. When you decided, I'm not going to pick myself up and dust myself off and move forward. My dad used to tell me all the time, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else does. That's really true in anything, and I believe it's really true in aviation. If you don't think you can do it, Nobody else does either. So you gotta have confidence yourself. There's a difference between confidence and cockiness, right? We don't want to be cocky, but we want to be confident. And I think that that's really kind of the most important thing is just plodding along, and, working hard day after day after day, one foot in front of the other. And that's what makes I think, any career successful, particularly in aviation.
Thank you for that. Our next question would be, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring pilots or pilots in training, what would it be?
I think we've already talked about it. For aspiring pilots, we've already talked about, hey, go do it. Right? Don't sit on the couch, get off the couch, go do it. I think that's important. Those that are doing it, chair fly. Learn how to do it. Learn how to prepare. However it becomes, you need to prepare yourself to go fly. Just do it. Because the thing of it is the planes are only going to get bigger and they're only going to get faster.
Yeah.
Right. And so, once you get to that, you're able to think at jet speed, for instance, you'll be fine. And so I think that is the big thing. And I can't stress, I know it sounds stupid, it sounds rudimentary. Oh, I should get in a simulator. I have seen kids that have done really well in the simulator. They built simulators in their house with Microsoft Flight, Flight Simulator. But then but they've also taught themselves some bad habits and kind of have to break them all.
Okay.
But chair flying, just procedures, knowing your procedures that are written down, knowing those code, and then working on the techniques that your instructor is going to teach you in the airplane. So it'll open up a lot of brain bites and make you more successful.
Okay, well, thanks for that. This next one's kind of funny. I'm kind of interested to hear your take on it. But have you seen any UFOs?
So I'm sure this probably came from my son's father-in-law. I can't talk about it.
It's classified.
Yeah.
You have to kill me.
No, exactly.
All right, sounds good. We'll have to leave that for the next interview then. Okay, so we actually have a current alumni from Random Aviation that is in naval flight training.
Mhm.
And he reached out and he asked, how do I stand out during primary and what does it take to get selected for jets?
Okay, so the way you stand out in the primary, the thing you need to realize in naval aviation is every day is a check ride. Every day counts the same. It doesn't matter. So you got to bring your Air Force is a little bit different. I did Air Force primary, and there are only some rides count more than others. But in the Navy, I don't know how Sinatra's going. It was a little bit more Air Force, the way we graded a little bit, but for the most part, every day is a check ride. And so being prepared is the most important thing. You can't take a day off, right? You can't show up and go, oh, no, I didn't like that today. You get ready to down and you're out, right? You want to keep those to a minimum. How do you make yourself stand out? You got to be good. And the way you do that is studying chair fly. I mean, it's a really, really simple formula. Some people can do it. And, I've told people before, there is a certain skill set that you have to be a carrier aviator. I would never be able to dunk a basketball. Short, fat guy, right? I'm never going to be able to dunk a basketball. So, I just don't have the genes for it. Right? I just can't do that. I could probably train for 10 years and never be able to get the leap needed to dunk a basketball. Well, some people are like that. They just can't grasp the techniques, or they just don't have that gene or whatever DNA that allows them to. That's a really, really, really small minority that just can't do it. I've seen a few people like that work their butts off and just can't do it. But for the most part, it's everybody can do it. That's a really rare case. So I think that, like we talked about before, preparation, study, chair fly, good attitude. All those things are, if you're not taking notes in a debrief, you're wrong, right? If you don't know your bold face before you get to, you bust one of those and somebody instructor asks you. Those are easy things to know, and so that's just preparation, and that takes a lot of work because you got it down, and they can ask you whatever, and know what you know. But it's an easy formula, right? It's study and preparation. He or she who's willing to work hardest is going to get the prize at the end. You see it all the time.
Yeah. So work hard and
work hard, study, and chair fly. Right?
Okay, awesome.
Stay on the bars.
Sounds good. So any final closing remarks, any words of wisdom you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, fly Navy.
Fly Navy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Brett. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.